Good afternoon, welcome back. It is Tuesday, November 21st, 2023. We got a little over a week to go in this month. Then we'll enter our final month. Got a couple birthdays to talk about today and a few events. Start back in 1982 at Riverside, final race of that Cup Series season. Tim Richmond sweeps the races at Riverside that year, his first and second career wins. Darrell Waltrip wins his second consecutive Winston Cup title. Of course, in 1983, Tim Richmond would leave J.D. Stacy's team and move over to the Blue Max team that would be running its first full season as Raymond Beadle purchased the team from M.C. Anderson. Excuse me, on this day in 1999, not really significant in terms of anything that happened, but on this day in 1999, the Cup Series race at Atlanta, Bobby Labonte won, no big surprise there, but this would be the last Cup Series race of the decade and of, I guess, that century, depending on how you mark your centuries. So the last Cup race of the 1900s won by Bobby Labonte. 2004 on this date, Greg Biffle wins at Homestead. Again, no big surprise there. Kurt Busch wins the Cup Series championship in the first chase for the Nextel Cup. Of course, this would be the closest, I believe it was, 6 points that Kurt beat Jimmy Johnson by at the time, the closest margin of victory. Of course, they had a points reset with 10 races to go. 1992 title has the closest full season championship margin of victory of 10 points. And our final event on this date in 2010, Carl Edwards wins at Homestead. Again, no big surprise there. You had a lot of drivers from the Roush camp at that time that just annihilated Homestead. But Jimmy Johnson wins his record fifth straight consecutive Cup Series championship. So let's talk about birthdays today. Born on this day in 1943, Formula One star. He was a championship contender in the late 70s, early 80s, but had a career-ending crash at Brands Hatch in 1986. I remember watching that as a child on TV. It was on ESPN. Of course, it was, I don't remember if it was live, tape delayed, whatever the situation was, but it was a first lap crash going into the first corner. I remember the car got tagged by somebody, start line crash, and he nosed headfirst into a Armco barrier. Did a lot of damage to both of his legs. I think he would come back and run some lower series stuff, but his Formula One career was essentially done, and that would be Mr. Jacques Laffite. At the time, he was kind of having a career resurgence, had some really, really strong runs. I want to say he was driving for the Ligier team, but he was always outside. He was just in that 5th, 6th, 7th position just about every race, because you had the 2 Williams, 2 Ferraris, and the 2 McLarens were always the 6 fastest cars. Then you had the 2 Lotuses, the Legers, the Benettons. They were always kind of up in the mix in that second echelon. Our next birthday comes from the world of drag racing. Born on this day in 1954. He's a pro stock contender in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. I remember the name and I remember the paint job. Mr. Larry Morgan. And I don't know about you guys, but Castrol they just have some sleek looking race cars. I just think like John Force's cars over the years, Casey Atwood's Busch car, and now on the RFK cars of Keselowski, and I believe Buescher's run a few Castrol jobs. Doesn't matter if they're the white cars or the black cars, they've always been very clean and very sharp looking, all the way back from the 90s till today. And our third and final birthday, born on this day in 1949, he's been a championship-winning crew chief. He's been a car owner in the NASCAR Cup Series. And I believe he runs, I want to say he works at like a little tire facility or an auto facility now. He was on the Scene Vault podcast about a year ago. It'd be Mr. Travis Carter. The Cards are going to pick him up during his first run as a car owner in the Cup Series here with Jimmy Spencer. But if we go back and we'll look at his history here, it'll give us a little bit. He worked with Benny Parsons at LG DeWitt, went to Penske for a minute with Allison and Marcus. 78, he joined Cale. That's where he won his championship, then had a couple of nice, strong years there. Then from 81 to 88, he was with Mach 1 with Harry Gant. won some races there. Then in 1989, he bought the old Mach 1 team to form what would become the 98 car there in 1990-91 with Banquet Frozen Foods. Butch Miller drove it for most of 1990. Not a lot of success. Jimmy Spencer took it over 1991, had a top 5 and about 5 top 10s, finished top 20 in points. Very strong for him. That's probably my favorite car to Travis Carter. I just, like how he's sitting there. He's the car owner and he's working. He's in there working on the engine, doing stuff. And there's one just kind of, back in the hauler area. 1992, they picked up Molly Black Gold as a sponsor. They had bad runs all year. Travis eventually had to shut the team down. I believe Molly Black Gold wasn't paying them, if I remember right. Then in 1994, he comes back. Now, these cards are all out of order. So in 1994, he kind of starts a Junior Johnson stepchild type team or a satellite team or whatever you want to call it. Hut Strickland drove it for a year. Then Jimmy Spencer took over for a great number of years. And this is pretty much going to cover just the Smokin' Joe's years. Winston took over sponsorship of this car in 1997. And then after that, after the Winston cigarette deal left, they had Kmart come on board for a couple of years before they went belly up. But other drivers that Travis Carter had during that time with Spencer, Todd Bodine, Darrell Waltrip, Joe Nemechek, Frank Kimmel, Hideo Fukuyama, and there's a couple other ones that were filling in there that were pay drivers during that time, I believe. Then in the early 2000s, I think about 2004 or 5, Travis did eventually have to shut the team down due to lack of funding. And, he had a pretty good career, I think. He had a good full career. Was it Hall of Fame worthy? I think he's going to teeter on that line because he had a lot of success as a crew chief, but not a lot of success as an owner. But that has been birthdays and events for today. Hope you enjoyed the video. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and we will see you tomorrow.